This story is from 2019. I was 13 at the time, but I still remember it like it was yesterday. Due to the trauma, well, maybe. I was bored at home alone and I FaceTimed my best friend, who lives in the apartment building next to mine, and I asked him if he would like to join me on a walk around the neighborhood. Well, he wasn't there. He was on his way back home from school, which is understandable, because it was a Thursday afternoon. There's a jogging circuit near my house and it's like 500 meters away. Well, due to my massive boredom, I put on my sport clothes, a basic t-shirt, a short that has no pockets, remember this detail. I then was headed with my music, vibing to the circuit. Arriving there, it was surprisingly not that empty, around 8 to 10 people in that 15-kilometer circuit. I started walking for a bit, and then I ran for a couple kilo, and then laid down on the grass. I noticed 2 guys on a motorcycle going back and forth. I didn't care that much since I was FaceTiming my 2 best friends. It was getting pretty late and it was around 6 p.m. and I was exhausted. I walked home but took another path that is kind of a shortcut. I had to walk through an empty big street with buildings that were in construction. I had taken that same path many times before with no issue. I had a feeling that someone was watching me and following me. I turned around and noticed the same 2 guys on that motorcycle heading towards me. I whispered to my friends on FaceTime that something weird was going to happen, and that they have to cut their mics and focus with me. The guys came by and one of them asked me where the nearest barbershop was. Out of stress, I gave them a random location. While the rider of the bike asked me about the barbershop, my right eye twitched and unfocused. I do have this ability, but I was still able to see with it. I saw in the bike's rearview mirror that the other guy was trying to look at where my phone was located. It was between my short and my belly because I had no pockets and I had my headphones in. I was freaking out. Time was starting to slow down. Seconds felt like hours and I couldn't feel my legs anymore. They went on but with a slow speed. It was like they were planning a backup plan. I had 3 options. 1. There is a taxi guy fixing his car. I could have went over to him and explained the situation, but my gut said, what if they noticed me and came back and maybe did what they had planned to do? 2. Stop a random car and hop in and explain the situation. My gut also said no. What if the car was locked? Plus the guys would have noticed that I knew what they were planning to do and came after me after the random car would go. And 3, this is what I chose. Run in the opposite direction into the traffic and take the path that I came by. I instinctively ran for a straight 5 minutes. I couldn't do it anymore and I entered a field and started running again towards some slums. I looked back and saw the guys coming after me into the field, and one of them was shouting, "Just stop, we only want to know where the barbershop is." There's one thing about me and it is that I always trust my gut, and it said, "No, run as quickly as you can, or you're gonna die today." And that's what I did. I ran between the slums and kept running until I arrived near my best friend's house, who was still on FaceTime with me. I told him to come downstairs right now and I laid down in the parking lot. He came in and he was freaked out because he knew that something was happening, but he didn't know what since I hadn't given him any more information. My face had turned yellowish and I threw up. I couldn't feel my legs or my arms anymore. He walked me to my house and I laid down, and from that moment I didn't remember a thing. I just remember me waking up the following day with bruises on my legs due to me running into the field full of pikes. This whole story happened in the space of about 10 or 15 minutes. Now I take that same path again with no worries. This happened a year or so ago, so forgive a lack of specific detail. One day after work around 4 or 5 p.m., my girl and I, that I worked with, decided to go see a movie. It was a rough shift in her and I felt like a movie would be nice. She asked if we could stop by her house so that she could change clothes from our work uniform, and I said that it's fine, since it was maybe 5 minutes away tops. We stayed at her house for a bit, we ate a quick snack, and then got into my car. She asked if we could stop by the gas station by her house so she could grab a Red Bull. Once again, I was fine with that because it was right by her house. I drove to the gas station, and the only parking was on the side of an abandoned car wash next to the station. To form a better image, the gas station and the car wash were right next to each other, both entrances facing the same way. It was entirely dark outside. The gas station was a fairly run-down one and didn't have any lights at the gas pumps like most do. So, it was pitch black except for the light coming from my car. A semi-truck was on the side of the gas station and had cones indicating the area that would inhibit the driver to do what he needed. So, I assumed the parking spots wouldn't be too close and I parked. My friend got out and went inside. I decided to stay in the car since she would only be a few minutes. I locked my doors after she got out, as it was a force of habit to do so. I went on my phone for a bit. After a couple of minutes, I saw a light flash on in the driver's side mirror of my car. I turned to look, since it was pointed in my direction. The truck driver had a flashlight pointed at my window, and just held it there for a few seconds, maybe 20 or so. I was kind of freaked out, but I assumed that he had a reason for doing so. He began walking towards my window, still with the flashlight on. I rolled down my window, no more than an inch, assuming maybe he was going to tell me to move my car or something. He stopped when he got 2 to 3 feet away from my window and then turned around. At this point, I was pretty scared, just because there was no reason for what he did. So I just rolled my window back up and I waited for my friend. I'm still watching the guy just in case, and I see him rummage around in the front part of his semi-truck for a bit. And then he stopped and he turned back to my car. There was something in his hand, I'm not sure what, and I'm glad that I didn't find out. He began walking towards my window. He was saying something inaudible, and it was at a rather loud volume. He got to my door this time and tried to open it. He tried to pull the handle a couple of times, but he couldn't open it, and then he started pulling more aggressively. My friend came out of the gas station and was walking towards my car. She looked scared. I was scared. The guy saw her come into my car and walked quickly back to his truck, and I drove away as quick as possible. I'm not entirely sure what happened or what was going to happen. The only theory my friend had was that maybe when he saw that I was a girl, the first time that he had the flashlight, he assumed that I would be a good target to kidnap or put into trafficking. That's just a theory though. I'm glad I won't ever have to find out what he was doing. It was the middle of the night, maybe 12 or 1 in the morning, and I had snuck out to get a bag of chips or something from the gas station a few blocks away from my house. It was the middle of December, and it was snowing pretty heavily outside. For the record, I was 14 or 15 at the time. I've always been pretty small, at about 5'4" in height, and 115 pounds in weight. I'm female, but I've always had short hair and kind of a boyish face. The gas station was completely empty, besides a woman behind the cash register, who I remember had been far too busy with filing her nails to pay too much attention. I had been peeking through some of the chip bags to find something good, when I heard the ding of the door as someone entered the small gas station. I didn't bother to look to see who it was. When I finally found what I was looking for, I turned to start heading towards the refrigerated section for a drink, before seeing the person who had just walked through the door. It was a tall, thin man, maybe 6'2", with brown hair, a red trucker hat and a short, scruffy beard. He looked like he was in his late 30s or early 40s. I was surprised that I didn't recognize the man. I lived in a small mountain town, and everyone knew everyone. Oddly enough, he was wearing a short-sleeved t-shirt and shorts, despite it being freezing cold outside. His shirt and pants were covered in grass stains, as if he had just been working on a lawn or something. He turned to me and smiled a toothy grin, before moving away from the door to the refrigerated area so that I could grab what I needed. I knew I shouldn't have seen anything wrong with this, but something about the grin and the way that his eyes looked me over was already kind of a red flag. I've always been a very nervous and paranoid person. I moved in and I opened the door, quickly grabbing a drink and backing off. Before I could turn away, I heard the man's raspy voice as he spoke to me. "Hey, you look familiar," the man said. He had a somewhat southern accent, which wasn't that uncommon considering where I lived. "Oh, yeah," I responded, not sure what to say to him. He introduced himself as Thomas before leaning against the door. "Why is a young man like you doing out this late?" he asked. Again, I wasn't sure what to say. I wasn't a boy for one thing, but I didn't bother to correct him. Just getting a snack," I responded, trying to inch my way away, trying to give off the hint that I did not want to talk. Yet the man just trailed behind me. "Do you know my daughter?" he asked me, cutting off one of the aisles. "Well, who's your daughter?" I asked shakily in response. The man frowned at me, his eyes narrowing in my direction. He refused to tell me her name, claiming that he didn't want boys touching her daughter. I was confused by the sudden change of mood, so I didn't say anything else. I started making my way towards the register before he cut me off again. "Do you need a ride? It's cold out there," he said, getting uncomfortably close. At this point, I could smell the alcohol on Thomas's breath. It made me very uncomfortable. "No thank you," I said, trying to move around him. He insisted, and yet again I refused. I moved to try and push past him, bumping into a metal shelf. A can of chips fell off the shelf, hitting the floor. The lady behind the register looked up from what she was doing, noticing me and the man. "Are you ready to check out?" she asked me, glaring at Thomas. I nodded and the man moved out of my way. I paid for the chips and drink, before thanking the woman and moving out of the gas station. But it didn't end there. When I began my walk down the snowy road, I saw the man get into his truck before getting out a minute later. He was already quite a ways away when he began walking in the same direction that I was. I would have called someone for help at this point, but I didn't have a phone at the time. I had quickened my pace and eventually, he turned around and he went home. I don't want to think about what would have happened if the man would have kept following me. So Thomas, I don't think we should meet again. This isn't too climactic, but it did open my eyes to what people are capable of doing. So, one day about 2 years ago, I was at my house with my younger sister and our friend. We were about 20 and 21-year-old females. We were hungry and we decided to go out and get some sushi. On the way to the restaurant, I noticed that I was low on gas, so I stopped to get some. I pulled up the pump and parked the car. I went into the gas station to pay while my sister and our friend waited in the car. As I was walking across the parking lot into the store, I noticed a man staring at me with a creepy smirk on his face. We made eye contact and he yelled across the parking lot, "Hey beautiful, why aren't you smiling?" I didn't respond or even acknowledge him. However, a young woman who witnessed this said to him, "Do not tell her to smile. She doesn't have to do anything to you." To this day, I think about that woman. I thanked her and continued to walk into the store. As I stood patiently in line, the same man walked in. He came right over to me in line and started to touch me. He was rubbing my arms and lower back and I pulled away. I said loudly, "Get away from me, I don't know you. Don't touch me or I'll defend myself." Other customers and the cashier were watching us, and I caused a scene. He whispered in my ear and told me to shut up, so people didn't think that he was a creep. Suddenly, the man ran out of the store into my car with my sister and friend still inside of it, so I ran after him. He opened the car door and started to say something to them when I yanked him back so hard from his shirt collar, and I punched him in his face. He proceeded to call me every other name in the book, but he left us alone and got in his car and drove away. I'm much more aware of my surroundings now. So, this was 2 years ago on Halloween. I had just discovered this sub about an hour ago and decided to post my own encounter. My best friend and I were leaving a club in Dallas and we stopped at a gas station to pick up some snacks and refreshments. This guy comes up to me and tells me that I look pretty. At this point, I'm drunk and I'm not worried about a dang thing, so I thank him, smile and continue looking for munchies. He starts to follow me through the gas station, but I kind of shrug it off. Me and my friend Payne are walking out when he comes up behind us and asks where we're going. At this point, I'm thinking, screw off, dude. We say curtly that we're going home and he seemed to take the hint, and he screwed off. We started to walk down the street. My friend was planning on driving us home in my car since I was unfit to drive. My friend wasn't 21 yet, so he hadn't been drinking. We were about 3 blocks from my car when we noticed a car driving really slowly behind us. We glanced back a few times and realized that it's the guy from the gas station following us. We decide that it's not a good idea to lead him back to my car, so we turn around and walk a different way back towards the street where the clubs are. He makes an illegal U-turn and follows us. He then rolls down his window and shouts to us asking if we need a ride. And politely I say, "No thank you, we're good. We just made a wrong turn." But he continues to follow us. We speed up our pace a bit and he speeds up too. He calls out to us again through the passenger window asking again if we want a ride. I tell him to please stop following us or I'm gonna call the police. He then calls me every name in the book and then he speeds off. Luckily after that, he left us alone. A little over a year ago, I had a job working overnight at a gas station close to my house. I'm a woman, and I was 31 at the time. I know, to some it seems unsafe for a woman to work a graveyard shift by herself. However, it was a slow store and the sheriff's office was about 20 feet across from it. I really didn't think that I would have that many problems. There would be about 30 customers in an 8-hour shift, and that was on a busier night. It was about 3:30 in the morning. I went outside to sweep the parking lot and last minute checked the trash cans. It was time for a cigarette and I had one headphone in kinda jamming out. Across the road in the parking lot of the sheriff's office, I saw a figure with his back to me. He was swaying back and forth while looking down. Honestly, it looked like he was enjoying a much needed piss. Against the sheriff's office though. Yeah, the building closed at 4 p.m. and didn't open until 6 the next morning, but why? By the back of his ripped white t-shirt, I remember that he had come in about 4 hours earlier. He was a total creep, and I could tell that he already had a good buzz going. I didn't say anything. I just took my eyes off of him and tried not to draw attention to myself. It was working until a car pulled in. I was still outside as they pulled up. I saw him look at the car and then at me, and back and forth again. As the customer was leaving, I walked her outside. I still had half a smoke burning and I had left my dustpan outside with the squeegee. We both heard him start to swear angrily and seemingly enraged in an argument with himself. She looked across the road and told me to be careful. I made an awkward joke about him being the one who should be more afraid of me or something like that. The man was still there but closer to the road, now facing the parking lot of my store. Whatever he was yelling was completely unintelligible. He was obviously very drunk, and he could barely stand straight, still swaying away. I didn't engage him, but I didn't take my eyes off of him this time. I just slowly walked back into the store. Something about his face really bothered me. It had a darkness to it, but his eyes looked wild. My experience during graveyard jobs had been that the crazy-eyed ones are the worst ones. It didn't look like it at all, and I wanted no part of it. I still had almost 3 hours to go and 2 before any other employees got there. Instantly, I went to the computer and I typed up a temporarily closed sign, just in case he wanted trouble. I was coming around the corner on my way to the doors when I saw that he had walked across the road to my side now. I literally just barely got the second door locked when he stumbled into a very small parking lot. My hand mimed the hand signal for cut across my neck, and basically saying, "Nope, sorry, you can't come in here, we're closed." I shook my head back and forth too, hoping to further discourage him. He started walking away but screamed something at me while he was walking. I don't mean he was grumpy and shouted at me or yelled that I was an asshole or anything. I mean like he was at an enraged volume and was violently throwing his hands everywhere. Definitely knowing that I'm in the wrong shift of the wrong job, I got really skeeved out. I decided to call the cops, and it's a good thing too, because the minute that I hung up with them, there he comes again up to the door. He starts pulling and banging on it. He backs up and runs into it, trying to ram it. Not that it would have done any good. I made the mistake of telling him that I had called the cops and that his ass was about to be grass. I say that I made the mistake of telling him because once I said that, he took off. The police never found him. They drove around the road and surrounding neighborhoods for over an hour, but they found no one. He was on foot, so I don't know where he could have gone to. He didn't harm me, and with them not finding him, I didn't fill out a police report or anything. I was safe behind thick glass doors that were locked for the rest of my shift. It just sucked. Maybe if I didn't warn him ahead of time, I wouldn't have had to spend the last 3 months of my job constantly looking over my shoulder. I'll never know what the right choice was. I'm just glad that I don't work there anymore.